Chapter 1, Stranded. It's strange how what drives us may abandon us midstream, how what tickles our ears with lies one moment may tell us truths that knock us on our emotional butt the next. Christopher Hawk. As it turns out, the middle finger has evolved into the longest digit so we can more efficiently stick it up and tell each other to F off. After all this time, I still can't believe no one had come to get me. By 3 o'clock, I was dehydrated, weak, and soaked in sweat. I had no choice but to accept a single fact. They're not coming. The event that changed my life was simple and random. Sometimes, however, the little things we encounter force us to confront the big things that are already unfolding before our eyes. On an unusually hot June morning, while I was sitting in a broken-down car with a flat tire, I began to notice something first slowly and then all at once. This is how evolution works, you know. Moving at a snail's pace, barely noticeable, and then, bam! Pop! Someone call Houston, we got a problem. My tire was flat, and the wheel of the frame held up just long enough for me to pull to the side of the highway. So there I was, on a highway in Chicago, cars flying by fast and furious, suddenly stopped dead in my tracks by no doing of my own. All had been right with the world 10 minutes ago when I was at Starbucks sipping a perfect tall cup of hot chocolate. The work week was over, and I was listening to the world's problems for 5 straight days. All I wanted was to get lost on the comfort of my couch, rest and relax. No problem, I said to myself. A simple call for roadside assistance, and I'll be lounging in a few hours tops. Yes, sir. All I need to do is make that call. This is where those policies pay for themselves. Just a wee bit of patience, and I'll be back on the road. At least that's what the bubbly voice promised on the other end of the line. Sheila, hold tight. They're on the way, darling. After the 3rd hour passed, and hundreds of vehicles had gone by, there I sat on the passenger side of my car, door wide open, legs swung over the seat like bent willow trees, my head buried in both of my hands. 3 more calls to friends that I knew would come through. Each declined in rapid succession. And by some odd coincidence, every one of them had somewhere important to be within the next hour. I made a last attempt to reach the towing service, only to hear, I know you're frustrated, Miss Robinson, but if you review your contract, we guarantee our service as it becomes available within 24 hours. You've only been waiting 3. I was livid. I had paid my monthly membership fees based on a pledge. We'll come and get you if something goes wrong, not we'll eventually show up at our convenience. Gee, thanks. If chivalry was alive and well, then I would have one final shot. I had been dating a lovely gentleman for the last few months, and although I didn't want to come across as helpless, this was an emergency. And I knew it was his day off, so I took a chance. Surely he would understand. I shot him a text. I'm stranded with a flat tire. Can you come help me out, please? He shot a short one back. I wasn't looking to see you for another few weeks. I'm so sorry, Sheila. I'm tied up. He made it sound like I was asking him to join me for a candlelit dinner date on the expressway. After promptly deleting his number permanently, I placed a couple more last-ditch effort calls. One to a neighbor and the other to a coworker. I guess to humor myself at that point. No answers. The final insult was the car full of rowdy teenagers who passed by and threw their half-eaten sandwiches and trash out the window. When the turkey, mustard, and mayonnaise came hurling at me and hit the windshield, I was done, and I had to concede a final time. They're not coming. I popped the trunk for a last pathetic look at the spare tire and jack that stood between me and a smooth ride home. The tools of freedom were staring me dead in the face, but I didn't have a clue about how to use them. One thought kept spiraling through my mind. Here I am, at the mercy of a tow truck that's not coming and passersby who are not stopping, all because I never took the time to learn how to change a flat tire. Before my grandfather died, he made a great effort to slow me down so I could learn how to change a flat tire. Repeatedly, I heard from him, "It's just something everyone should know how to do. Baby, please let me show you." He had asked a couple dozen times easily. In the pure stupidity and ignorant bliss of youth, his constant urging eventually melted into background noise. I don't think I actually ever told him no. I simply ignored what he had to say. That was a decision that I would live to fully regret 25 years later on an ill-fated summer day. I was crippled and vulnerable on the side of the road, unable to do for myself what I was entirely capable of doing had I only taken the time to learn. There I sat, ill-equipped and unprepared, stuck on the roadside, waiting for rescue. I had no idea how I was going to make it home when I decided to set out on foot, and by then I didn't care. I was no longer angry about the position I was in or the folks who never showed up. I walked 13 miles that day, and somewhere between the car I left on the side of the road and my front door, I made a promise to myself. This would be the last day I would ever end up stuck on the roadside waiting for someone to change my flat tire. About halfway through my stroll, the driver of an empty bus slowed down to offer a ride. I'm not sure if he genuinely wanted to help or thought I was an overdressed prostitute having a bad hair day. I waved him on all the same. Somehow it had become a mission for me to get home on my own steam. Besides, I was sweating like a Georgia mule, and the only cure for that was fresh air, even 95-degree air. I had a long time to think on that walk, and a harsh reality washed over me again and again. In more ways than we care to admit, all of us are naked and vulnerable in today's world. A simple twist of fate, whispered at the right time, and life can be interrupted permanently. Luckily, I only had to deal with a flat tire that day. True, it was only a temporary headache, but the flat tires of life come in all shapes, sizes, and colors. The death of a spouse, pregnancy, divorce, financial devastation, illness. If faced with any of these calamities, you'd pray God someone comes. If I were a betting woman, then I would cash in my chips and exit the casino. Today's odds make me really nervous. The truth is, what happened to me that day is nothing special, perhaps even commonplace for the times. People are stranded, alone, and waiting for rescue all over the world. I've watched hundreds of clients struggle to cope and recover when the storms blow through their lives. Dealing with the fallout from a storm is one thing, but coping with the realization that no one came to offer aid and comfort is quite another. Both are equally devastating. I didn't need to end up stranded on the roadside to figure out that things are changing in our world, nor do you. But something shook me up that day, and a thought took hold in the near 100-degree heat. Things really have changed. In so many ways, we have become a world full of fiercely independent, yet exposed people who are out on a limb and existing on the edge of both extremes with nothing to bridge the gap except the relationship we have with God, ourselves, and others. This book explores the reason behind the relationship disconnect so many people are experiencing today. And it looks at this disconnect from a genetic, social, spiritual, and environmental perspective. It's also about waking up and facing the new realities of our evolution while adapting and learning to change our own flat tires wherever possible, so we can stay off the side of the road wishing and hoping for rescue that's not coming. The roadside is life's ditch. It was never intended to be a permanent residence. I wrote this book from multiple vantage points, and I believe I'm especially qualified to deliver the message found here. There is not a page you will read that I have not lived. I'm not making guesses about how life and relationship work. My information comes firsthand. I received my training in sociology, psychology, and social work from one of the top institutions in the United States, and I've spent the better part of 20 years walking men, women, and children and families through the highs and lows and fallouts of life and relationships. This was born out of a sincere desire to bring aid and comfort to those who are looking for solace and answers in what has become a tough relationship climate in which to live, love, and exist happily. I'm convinced more people than ever are finding themselves on the roadside because of a stubborn refusal to accept and adapt to the real-world changes that have taken place for how we relate with each other. The problem with evolution is that it takes place the same way our lives do, minute by minute and day by day. Where did the time go? How could she have grown this much? I looked yesterday and she was just a bouncing baby girl on my knee. When did I become an old man? These are the questions we too often ask ourselves in a state of half shock and awe. Evolution becomes real and can only be fully appreciated when we stop and pay attention to it. Evolution only brings one consistent outcome for everyone and everything it touches: change. Evolution transformed one supercontinent into 7 continents. Evolution is responsible for the camel's ability to close his nostrils in a sandstorm. Evolution is the reason the palm nut vulture learned to love eating nuts instead of meat like his cousin, the golden eagle. Evolution explains why Eskimos are shorter and chubbier than most, which helps them to endure bitterly cold winters. Evolution touches every part of our lives from the very start. Environmental change is the rocket that propels evolution forward. The social and emotional environment we live, sleep, work, and raise our children in is different. So why would we think for a second evolution has not had a profound effect on our relationships in fundamental and important ways? In this new environment, some of us are far more exposed than others. This is a good time to slow down and take a thoughtful look at where you and your relationships fit into the new reality. We've all bantered about the phrase, things are changing, things are changing. I'm here to tell you that change is not upon us. When something is approaching, we have time to prepare, clean the house, and hide the silverware. Preserve your energy. The time for fevered frenzy is long gone. Relax into the moment and realize that change is here and it's right in our faces with attitude. There are no more delays, layovers, or connecting flights. We have touchdown. And whether you choose to acknowledge the landing or not, we have arrived at our destination. It's called a new day. I never paid much attention to the people who started spouting off at the mouth about these changes. I actually felt sorry for them. To me, they sounded like people who were stuck and couldn't get over the nostalgia of their past. About a decade ago, I stopped feeling sorry for them and I started listening for reasons I could no longer ignore. I began to notice a marked trend and sharp change in my client profile. People were still coming in for treatment of garden variety depression, anxiety, grief, and loss, but there was something different about their chief complaint. In the last 15 years, nearly 75% of my clients reported a serious disconnect with relationship support from the people in their lives when it was needed. Nearly 100% of these clients said their relationship had become a source of stress due to the fear of saying or doing something that would lead to their being cut off. Also noteworthy was the fact that these people were not alone in their lives. They had people around them, often in abundance. What was missing, however, was a deep and meaningful connection to these people and their shows of tangible support. In response to this threat of relationship abandonment or cruel treatment, it became evident that a significant number of people had opted to shut down altogether. So what are we left with? We're left with an increasing number of people isolated or locked into a perpetual eggshell dance of delicacy in their relationships. I call these relationships porcelain because they are fragile, inauthentic, and completely susceptible to being shattered into a million pieces should a single slight breeze pass through. Why the change then? There was a time when sharing in a relationship meant letting your hair down in safety, not having to manage heart palpitations. There was also a time when having people around you meant you were supported. This assumption is no longer valid today. Similarly, many people now assume that a heavy rain will cure a region suffering from drought. That's not true. Those heavy rains saturate the plants on the surface at first. Everything looks fine after a downpour. But the core conditions of drought still remain deep underground, despite the lush appearance on top. Regardless of the ongoing smiles and glee presented on Facebook and magazine covers, we are in relationship drought in the United States and around the world. Our roots are dry, and the light sprinkles of spring showers, smiles, Instagram, and text messages are not cutting the mustard anymore, if they ever did. The deep bonds of relationships that do have roots grounded in affinity, mutual support, respect, and caring are life-sustaining and will help support healthy functioning despite multiple life storms, spinouts, and flat tires. People have become thirsty in a desert that is offering a decreasing number of fresh water streams. The word satiety derives from the Latin word satiae, which means to be full or gratified. There are real reasons why more and more people are reporting less feelings of satiety less often where their relationships are concerned. The trends are increasing for a reason. So I set out to discover those reasons. Why are so many people feeling isolated, on edge, and disconnected, despite the clusters of people around them? Why do so many people feel ditched on the roadside? The answers I uncovered were stunning, surprising, and even humorous at times. Evolution has indeed caught up with each of us in our relationships. You'll need to learn to change your own flat tires to ensure your survival and happiness in the new relationship climate. Required travel on the road of life is part of the price of admission. However, how you travel is up to you. You don't necessarily have to understand how to change spark plugs or how your engine works to drive a car, but it changes the ride for the better if you do. There is a great benefit in learning how to make your own repairs if something goes wrong on the road. And there is priceless benefit in learning how to maintain your vehicle well so that you don't run into unforeseen problems in the first place. This book was written to provide you with a deeper understanding of the reason that relationships have become so fragile and transient. My goal, quite simply, is to arm you with the information you need to rise above the harsh realities we face in our relationships today. Then you can adapt successfully and lead the life you are so capable of living. My grandpa Hood always told me The truth never requires convincing someone. There's no hard sell found in this book. I only ask that you pay very close attention to what I'm saying in these pages that follow and allow your own truth to speak clearly. Understanding paves the way to truth, and truth is freedom.